From orbit, Earth looked like a dream, soft blues and greens swirling under white clouds, a world wrapped in calm silence as it spun beneath the golden warmth of its sun. There were no signs of war from above, no smoke, no fire, no screams. Just oceans breathing beneath the winds and cities glittering like tiny constellations across continents. But dreams can shatter in a heartbeat. The Zephyrian fleet arrived in silence, slipping out of hyperspace like knives sliding from shadows. 200 warships, sleek and sharp, their hulls crafted from living crystal that pulsed with soft violet light. They took position in high orbit with chilling precision, like wolves circling prey that hadn't realized it was already dead. On the command bridge of the Imperial Spear, Admiral Kether stood tall, his pale blue skin gleaming under the ship's bioluminescent glow. 4 arms clasped behind his back, he watched Earth spin slowly beneath him. His black, glassy eyes, so wide and deep they reflected nothing, stared unblinking at the human world. "It's always the same," Kether murmured. His voice was smooth and sharp, like glass being drawn across metal. "They build their towers and dream of greatness. Then we arrive, and they remember their place in the order of things." His second in command, Commander South, stepped beside him and bowed all 4 arms. "Fleet is in position, Admiral. Orbital defenses detected. Pathetic ones." Kether didn't smile. His species didn't have lips built for such expressions. But there was something in the angle of his head that hinted at amusement. "Begin the purge. Start with their satellites and space platforms. Leave the surface intact for now. Let them watch their skies fall." Across the fleet, the command rippled through living ships that awakened like predators from slumber. Weapons hummed, feeding on dark energy harvested from stellar cores. And then, without fanfare or mercy, the bombardment began. Purple beams lanced out across the void dot in Earth's orbit. Defensive stations blinked to life, human engineers and soldiers scrambling to react, shouting into radios, powering up weapon systems that had never been used in real battle. The stations were small, metal, and made with fusion-powered dreams of defense. But dreams don't stop apocalypse. One by one, they were erased from existence, vaporized, crushed, disintegrated under weapons meant to split moons. Within minutes, the skies above Earth were blooming with fire. In North America's defense complex buried deep beneath Colorado, General Marcus Stone stood before a wall of cascading data. He watched the orbital feed as his satellites blinked out, replaced by static and flames. His jaw clenched, but his voice was steady. "Status." Colonel Lisa Park, his chief of staff, turned from her console. Her voice shook, but only slightly. "All orbital stations gone. The enemy is repositioning. Looks like they're preparing for a surface strike. Protocol 7, Stone ordered. Move all personnel to underground shelters. Begin population. Center evacuation. Get Deep Command online." Lisa hesitated. "Sir, you think it's time?" Stone's eyes didn't leave the screen. "It's time." Across Earth, sirens screamed. Traffic lights went dark. Trains halted mid-route. Power grids began shutting down, not from damage but by design. Underground, vast automated systems awakened. Entire cities vanished from thermal scans as elevators descended into the depths, sealing tight behind thick alloyed doors. Admiral Kether watched with confusion. "What is this? Where are they going?" "Subterranean movement, sir," one of his technicians reported. "They're not running. They're vanishing. Keep scanning. Earn them out if we have to. No one hides from the Empire." But Earth was hiding something that didn't appear on any Zephyrian database. Something old, deep, and deliberate. The humans were not surrendering. They were waiting. Above them, the sky burned. Beneath the surface of a dying world, Earth began to breathe again. Far below the cities where sirens screamed and above which orbital fire bloomed like poisonous flowers, there was silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of precision. Of something vast awakening. 10 kilometers underground, hidden from satellites and immune to alien sensors, steel lungs filled with fresh oxygen. Lights flickered on in subterranean cities no one in the Zephyrian fleet knew existed. The earth above was burning, but below, something else was stirring. The Deep Command Network had been a myth for generations, even among Earth's own citizens. A whispered legacy passed in classified code and buried reports. While governments rose and fell, secret hands had carved the bones of the Earth into armor. Hundreds of kilometers of corridors and vaults, bunkers and launch bays, quantum laboratories, and launch tunnels that stretched from Antarctica to the Marianas Trench. They had prepared for this moment, not for months or years, but for centuries. In one of those tunnels, Captain Sarah Chun opened her eyes. She had been dormant, suspended, in a sensory stasis chamber designed to keep her conscious mind linked to the ship's mind without overwhelming either. Around her, dark walls pulsed with biocircuitry. There was no noise, but she could feel it, the pulse of the artifact buried deep in the ship's heart. It was stirring now, responding not to her commands but to the universe itself, as if something had nudged it from slumber. Her implant blinked. A voice filtered into her mind, cool, calm, familiar. Captain Chun, this is Command AI Overseer Level 1 priority. The Zephyrian fleet has entered engagement phase. Orbital losses, total. Protocol Skyfall is active. You are cleared to initiate interface prime. Sarah exhaled slowly, then whispered, understood. She stepped barefoot onto the central plate of the chamber. Cables emerged from the floor like roots finding a home. They hissed as they connected to ports in her spine, wrists, and skull. There was no pain, just a rush of light behind her eyes, and the sense that she was falling inward, deeper into herself, until her body and mind blurred at the edges. Then she felt it. The ship, the Tempest Fury, had no bridge in the traditional sense. It had a neural symphony. Sarah's thoughts merged with computational fields billions of times faster than any supercomputer. She felt the ship's weapons like clenched fists, its shields like skin. She felt the buried hum of its quantum cascade reactor and the deep, slow beat of the artifact pulsing in its core. It had been sleeping. Now it was awake. In the control center, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Marcus Stone stood before a 3D display of the Earth's outer orbit. The Zephyrian fleet moved with terrifying precision. They had begun targeting military installations, just as predicted. Only they hadn't predicted that Earth would simply vanish. Power grids fell, yes, but intentionally. Radio silence wasn't a loss of signal, it was a tactic. Stone watched as cities across the globe went dark, disappearing from Zephyrian scans. Even he didn't know the full depth of the Deep Command Network. That knowledge belonged to fewer than 5 living humans. And one of them was no longer quite human. Status of the Fury? He asked. Lisa Park checked her data feed. Life signs nominal. Neural link active. Interface prime is stable. God help them, Stone said quietly. She's in. Half a world away, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood inside the Arctic excavation vault where the artifact had first been discovered. The thing didn't obey geometry. Looking directly at it made her head ache and her teeth itch. It was crystalline, but not entirely physical. It seemed to phase in and out of local space-time as if it were more idea than object. Now, for the first time in 20 years, it was changing. Symbols began to shimmer across its surface, not alien. Glyphs, but mathematics. Prime sequences cascading through multidimensional logic trees. The artifact wasn't just reacting, it was broadcasting to something. She activated a full containment scan. "This is Dr. Vasquez. The artifact has entered Phase 3. Energy output is increasing. It's transmitting outward into space, possibly farther. I recommend full scale." The lights flickered. Then went red. The power surge wasn't from the artifact, it was from the Tempest Fury. In orbit. The Zephyrian fleet had paused. Admiral Kether frowned. Their sensors showed a shift in planetary behavior. Their scans now encountered dead zones. Like holes in reality, the humans had stopped broadcasting. Their heat signatures were vanishing. And now strange distortions had begun to ripple near the Arctic Circle. "Something's coming up from beneath the ice," one of his sensor officers said nervously. "Destroy it," Kether said. Beams fired. They never reached their target. Midway. To the ground, space bent. Light folded. The beams twisted back and dissipated into violet mist. Then the ice exploded. The Tempest Fury rose into the sky like a god birthed from the bones of the planet. Its hull drank the light around it, matte, black except for thin veins of pulsing blue energy. It was not shaped like a ship. It was shaped like something from myth spires and plates, arcs and spheres. Its design meant not for aerodynamics, but for controlling reality itself. It had mass, but more than that, it had presence. The Zephyrian sensors couldn't agree on its size. They couldn't agree if it was fully in this dimension. And inside it, Sarah opened her eyes, not her human ones, but the ones linked to the ship. She could see the Zephyrian fleet like glass puppets suspended in motion. She could hear the frequencies of their weapons, the tension in their shield harmonics. Her voice, amplified through dimensional channels, echoed across every ship in the Zephyrian Armada. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of Earth. You have committed an unprovoked act of war against humanity. You have 3 minutes to leave this system." Admiral Kether stared at the black monolith that had risen from the earth and laughed. "One ship?" He leaned forward. "Destroy it." The countdown had begun. And Earth was no longer hiding. The first sign was a tremor not in the ground, but in space itself. Sensors aboard the Zephyrian fleet began to waver. Gravitational readings twisted into impossible values. Magnetic fields shifted in erratic spirals. Admiral Kether stood frozen on the bridge of the Imperial Spear, watching his instruments flicker like stars dying in fast forward. A moment ago, everything had been under control. Now something was changing, something fundamental. "Report." He snapped. His technicians scrambled across the crystal consoles, their blue skin shimmering under emergency lights. "Gravitational anomaly centered at Earth's northern polar region, Admiral. Power spikes off the scale. We don't know what's causing it." Kether's forearms twitched with unease. He had brought 200 ships, each one capable of planetary annihilation. This was supposed to be easy, a demonstration of superiority. Instead, Earth had gone dark, its cities vanished from heat scans, its citizens buried in fortified silence. And now, this visual feed. He ordered. The screen shifted to a view of the Arctic. What should have been an endless plain of ice was a maelstrom of steam and rising debris. The ice was cracking, not splintering from bombardment, but erupting from within. Geysers of vapor shot kilometers into the sky. And then slowly, as if the planet itself were lifting its head to gaze back at the stars, something rose from beneath the ice. It wasn't a ship. Not in any traditional sense. It was a structure of black metal and living alloy, broader than a mountain range, taller than any skyscraper ever built. Spires of glowing blue energy crowned its curved frame. It moved with terrifying grace, its surface shifting like molten obsidian. For a moment, the Zephyrian fleet went utterly silent. Not one breath was drawn. Not one hand moved, because nothing like this had ever been seen. "What is that?" whispered Commander South. Admiral Kether couldn't answer. No one could. From deep within the bowels of the thing, this colossus that had slept beneath the ice for centuries, came a pulse. Not light, not sound. A thought dot, and far below, in the ship's neural core, Captain Sarah Chun opened her eyes. She wasn't alone anymore. She could feel the ship's mind awakening alongside hers. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't just artificial intelligence. It was alive. And it remembered everything. Every equation, every dimensional fold, every gravitational echo of the stars themselves. It had been built from knowledge no human should have possessed, and it had waited for her dot now. They were one dot in her mind. She felt its power. She could see through the hull as if it were her skin. She could sense space like an ocean she was born to swim in. The weapon systems weren't tools, they were instincts. And when she breathed, the ship breathed with her. Outside, the Tempest Fury finished its ascent. The clouds parted. The dark sun of its hull reflected no light, but bent it, pulled it inward. Reality thinned around it like water swirling down a drain. On the Imperial spear, panic was blooming like a second sunrise. "Admiral," said the chief sensor technician, voice tight with disbelief, "that object, it's emitting energy. Patterns that predate known galactic physics. Its hull mass density is impossible. Parts of it exist in more than 3 dimensions. Our weapons are scanners. They don't work against it." Admiral Kether snapped out of his trance. "Fire everything. Bring it down before it fully activates." Across the Zephyrian fleet, crystal weapons powered up. Beams of ultraviolet plasma charged. Dark matter torpedoes rotated into launch tubes. Command signals flared across the Cum-Web dot, and in that moment just before war, "Return," Sarah spoke. Her voice boomed across every channel in perfect Zephyrian. "You came to our world with arrogance and fire. You brought death, expecting surrender. What you awakened was neither. This is the Tempest Fury. You have one opportunity to leave. Choose wisely." Admiral Kether bared his teeth, his pride outweighing his fear. Destroy it. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire, and the mountain flew. The Zephyrian fleet did not hesitate. As one, 200 ships unleashed the fury of an empire. Streaks of plasma hotter. Then stellar cores roared toward Earth's new monstrosity. Dark matter torpedoes spiraled through void space, dragging behind them fields of gravitational decay. Beam lances that could pierce planetary crusts swept across the heavens, converging on the rising black ship. And yet, the Tempest Fury did not move. It did not dodge, did not shield, did not fire back. It simply existed, an anomaly in form and function, a violation of known physics. Its silhouette shimmered against the stars, not reflecting the oncoming barrage, but bending it, distorting it. Like light through warped glass. The first wave of attacks hit, and nothing happened. Plasma dispersed like rain on stone. Torpedoes detonated harmlessly against a membrane that wasn't there. Space twisted, reformed, refused to obey. On the bridge of the Imperial spear, Admiral Kether watched in stunned silence as the combined firepower of the Third Imperial Fleet, capable of scouring the surface of a moon in under 5 minutes, achieved nothing. Not a scratch. Not a ripple. Not even heat signatures registering damage. Just ... silence. "Why aren't our weapons working?" he growled. One of his tacticians stared at the readouts, sweat forming on his pale skin. "It's impossible, Admiral. The structure. It's not shielding in the conventional sense. It's distorting local space-time. Explain." "It exists in 11 dimensions, sir. Our weapons are ... trapped in 3. Kether's expression twisted. "That is nonsense. No vessel can..." He stopped. Because on the view screen, the Tempest Fury had begun to change. Patterns spread across its hull. Not lights, not energy. Mathematics. Equations wrote themselves across its dark surface in symbols older than the stars. Shapes folded and refolded. The fabric of space around it began to hum, vibrating like a plucked string in a vacuum. Inside the ship, Captain Sarah Chun sat motionless in her command chair, her body suspended in the neural web of the control core. She had long since stopped seeing the bridge as a place. It was now a symphony of sensory data, her mind fused with the vessel in a communion of thought. Around her, her crew worked with reverent calm. Lieutenant Commander Jackson spoke softly. Weapon systems at full power. Probability cascade arrays stabilized. Quantum cascade reactors balanced. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at her station, her fingers trembling as she studied the impossible formulas blooming on her displays. We're not firing energy or matter. We're about to fire concepts. We are going to break their reality, Sarah. Sarah's voice was low, resolute. Then let's begin. The Tempest Fury shifted, its bow glowing with symbols not meant for three-dimensional minds. Its targeting system was not optical or thermal, it was causal. It selected the flagship of the Zephyrian fleet, not by position, but by outcome. The ship whose destruction would collapse morale, trigger confusion, sow fear. Sarah raised her hand. Fire. The first shot was not a beam. It was a vector of probability, a stream of rewritten physics, guided by equations that flex space-time like clay. It struck the Imperial Spear amidships, and the flagship of the Zephyrian Empire began to unravel. The crystal hull fractured not from explosion but from confusion. It couldn't decide what it was: solid, liquid, plasma, waveform. It flickered in and out of existence as its atoms failed to agree on how to behave. Inside, Admiral Kether clawed at his command console. His hands passed through the controls. The walls melted, then returned, then inverted. Crew members screamed as their bodies became paradoxes stretched across moments that hadn't happened yet, fused with probabilities that should never have been. Then, as if the universe changed its mind, the ship was gone, not destroyed. Erased. Where it had once floated in orbit, there was now only empty space. On every ship in the fleet, panic detonated. Flagship down. No readings, no debris, no command signal. Chaos spread like fire through the fleet's ranks. Commander South, now the highest-ranking officer by sheer survival, gripped the sides of her command chair as her vessel shook with horror, not from damage, but from what she had just seen. Evasive maneuvers, scatter formation. Commander, her helmsman whispered, what did they just do? She didn't answer, because she didn't know. The Tempest Fury fired again. The second target, a Zephyrian cruiser, aged 10 million years in 5 seconds. Its crystal hull became brittle, then dust. Its crew withered in moments, their bodies becoming shadows, then bone, then nothing at all. The third shot was worse. The causal loop disruptor locked onto a destroyer and inverted its timeline. It never launched, never existed, and every memory of it faded from the minds of those who had served aboard. Gone. Not killed. Unwritten. Inside the Tempest Fury, Sarah remained calm. She hated this, hated what she had to do, but she remembered the first wave. The burning skies, the screams from New York, Tokyo, Lagos, Paris. She remembered the orbital footage. The loss. They had asked for peace. And this was the answer. On one of the remaining Zephyrian ships, a technician whimpered, how do you fight something that attacks reality? There was no answer, only fear. Back aboard the Tempest, Jackson's voice was steady. Remaining ships are scattering. We can eliminate them all. Sarah paused. She could feel the ship urging her, its systems hungry, primed. No, she said. At last, let them live. Let them run. Why? so they can warn the galaxy. Then she turned to Jackson. But fire one more shot. Show them what precision looks like. Gravity well manipulator. Just one. Jackson nodded. A new weapon hummed into existence. A localized singularity. The size of a marble appeared in the center of a retreating battleship. For a fraction of a second, it compressed matter into oblivion. Then it vanished. The battleship collapsed into itself. Every molecule gone. But ships a kilometer away were untouched. In the deep silence of space, the galaxy's most feared empire was learning a lesson no one had taught them in 3,000 years. Earth had awakened, and it remembered everything. The transmission didn't come from Earth. It didn't need to. It came from every Zephyrian ship still limping away from the Sol system. Scrambled voice logs, corrupted sensor feeds, corrupted time indexes. Their data streams were broken, looping. Fragments of reality that no algorithm could make sense of. Some reports ended before they began. Others contained impossible time-stamped ships destroyed before they had even launched. But one message cut through it all. A whisper spoken not by a survivor, but by a witness on the edge of something divine. We attacked them. They erased us. That single line pulsed across the galactic commnet like a beacon made of fear. In the glittering spires of the Andromedan Parliament, alien senators gathered beneath chandeliers of ionized gas and hovering dataglyphs. Their bodies were as diverse as the stars themselves, liquid beings and floating spheres, crystalline insects, silicon-based lifeforms bound in containment fields. But they all shared one emotion. Terror. The Parliament had not convened a full emergency summit in 400 years. Not since the void plague of Harkin's Drift. Now, the chamber's emergency quorum alert pulsed red across every sector, and the silence of ancient fear reigned. Senator Vexthory of the Crystalline Dominion stood at the center, her translucent exoskeleton glowing a faint blue. Her species had witnessed stars die and galaxies merge. But this was new. The Zephyrian Third Fleet is gone, she said. Murmurs spread like plasma storms. Not defeated, gone. Their command flagship was erased from space-time. No wreckage. No radiation trail. Nothing. And the attackers? Asked Senator Mock of the Silicon Confederacy, his voice grinding through a mechanical interface. One ship. The chamber fell silent. It was a silence built on disbelief. On the collapse of assumptions so deeply woven into galactic thought that their unraveling felt like madness. What kind of weapon can remove a vessel from causality? Asked Mock. Vext Hari turned slowly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Mathematics. That word spread. Not plasma. Not dark matter. Not nanotech or exotic energy fields. Mathematics. Raw. Conceptual force wielded by a species they had dismissed for millennia. Across the galaxy, whispers turned to signals. Debates turned to dread. In the deep void between galaxies, aboard the antimatter-forged warship Eternal Darkness, the War Council of the Karathi Syndicate reviewed the same footage. War Leader Krath was a creature of perfect structure. His armor grew from his bones, his blood was magnetized steel, and his voice was the hum of resonance fields. He had crushed empires, broken planets. He was not afraid of much, but he stared at the image of a human ship floating alone, untouched, in a graveyard of broken laws. This is not a weapon, he said. This is an idea, weaponized. His second in command, a cyborg named Varen, adjusted his optical lens. Sir, should we prepare our fleets? Krath was silent. Then slowly he said, No, we send a probe. We need to know if they are gods or merely something worse. Back in the Sol system, the Tempest Fury hung still, its weapons idle but charged. Earth's orbit was filled with debris, ash, and silence. No celebration. No victory parades. Just the hum of rebuilt satellites and the sobering awareness that the galaxy was now watching Dot in her ready room. Captain Sarah Chun stood alone, reviewing intercepted messages. Her neural interface still thrummed faintly with the ship's presence, like a phantom limb she'd learned to live with. "We've become a myth," she whispered. Behind her, the door chimed. Jackson entered with a data pad. "Ma'am," he said, "we've received 27 separate communications in the last hour. 4 are from major governments. 1 from something called the Peaceful Coexistence Coalition. They're asking for a meeting. And they're using perfect English." Sarah turned. "English?" Jackson nodded. "Flawless. They want to talk. They say they want peace." Sarah said nothing for a moment. She looked at the star map hovering over the table, red rings marking the last known positions of fleeing Zephyrian ships. Her voice was flat. "They didn't care about peace when the Zephyrians opened fire." "No, ma'am," Jackson agreed. "But now they've seen what we can do, and now, suddenly, they want to be friends. Typical." "What should I tell them?" Sarah didn't answer at first. She looked down at the small crystalline token resting on her desk, a fragment from the artifact buried in Antarctica, the same type now pulsing within the ship's core. She didn't fully understand it. No one did, but it had given them power beyond imagination. And with it came the burden of choice. "Set up the meeting," she said at last. "But tell them the Tempest Fury stays in low orbit, with weapons online." The meeting took place. 3 days later, a single alien vessel arrived in system, broadcasting no weapon signatures, flying a white banner made of modulated solar wind particles. It was shaped like a spiral shell, colored in soft blues and bioluminescent greens. It docked under escort near Earth's old lunar station. Inside the Tempest Fury, the bridge transformed. Walls became fluid, reshaped to accommodate the holographic form of the ambassador. She appeared before them, a being of light and wings, resembling a cross between a butterfly and a tree, every movement trailing fractal color patterns. Her name was Terran, and her voice sounded like wind over ancient stones. "Captain Sarah Chun," she said. "I speak for the Peaceful Coexistence Coalition, and on behalf of 57 independent species, we wish to formally open negotiations." Sarah stared at the image. Her expression was unreadable. "You watched the Zephyrians attack us," she said. "You said nothing, did nothing." "We feared them," the ambassador replied. "We fear you now, but there is a difference. The Zephyrians conquered, you protected." Sarah's voice lowered. "Don't mistake restraint for weakness." "We don't," Terran said gently. "That's why we came." In the silence that followed, something deeper stirred. Far beneath the ship, in the heart of the artifact, pulses of light changed rhythm. Signals once dormant began to shift. Coordinates, 12 of them, appeared on the ship's internal maps, scattered across the galaxy. Each one corresponded to an artifact, and each one was now awake. In the command center, Dr. Elena Vasquez paled. "They're not responding to us," she whispered. "Then what?" asked Jackson. Elena turned slowly toward the main display, where new data scrolled in real time. "They're responding to each other. Across the stars, in forgotten places older than civilizations, ancient devices hummed with power. On worlds where suns had long since died, in ruins buried beneath gravity-warped seas, 12 artifacts began transmitting in harmony, not to humans, not to aliens. To something deeper, something older. In the galactic core, beyond the veil of what could be scanned, ancient machines shifted. Sensors that had not been active in 10 million years blinked awake. The galaxy had witnessed fire. Now it would hear thunder. The first of them arrived without light. No hyperspace wake, no gravitational ripple, no warning. One moment, Earth's deep space monitors were staring into the quiet black between Jupiter and Saturn. The next 24 vessels were simply there, scattered across the solar system like seeds blown in on a stellar wind. They were not like Zephyrian ships. They weren't like anything. Each one was the size of a small moon, but mass readings were inconclusive. Their forms twisted subtly in the mind's eye spheres, spires, spectral geometries constantly shifting. Some were made of translucent metal that reflected nothing. Others radiated colors outside the visible spectrum, pulses that made. Even hardened AI systems glitched for nanoseconds at a time. On Earth, alarm klaxons screamed to life across hidden command bunkers. In orbit, every satellite locked onto the intruders. The surviving Hurricane-class ships, the Stormbreaker and the Thunderstrike, shifted into full combat posture, reality anchors humming beneath their hulls. And aboard the Tempest Fury, the air itself changed. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation platform, staring into the vastness through layered displays of gravitational flux and probability drift. The newcomers had not fired a single shot. They weren't broadcasting any known signal, but their presence was overwhelming. It wasn't just technological superiority, it was ontological. They should not be able to exist here, not in this dimension. Behind her, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked furiously at her station. Her hands moved in short, precise motions, but her eyes betrayed growing awe. "Captain," she said, "these ships, they aren't using engines. They're not propelling themselves through space, they're moving space around them." "Fold space?" "No," Elena replied, "not bending it, rewriting it." Sarah said nothing. The Tempest Fury's AI, her partner in battle, and thought sent a soft pulse through the neural link. It wasn't alarmed. It was reverent. For the first time since awakening, the ship recognized something greater than itself. Then the signal came, not in sound, not in light, but through language made of pure logic mathematics rendered into sound, vibrating the quantum field surrounding the planet. It translated itself with flawless accuracy in every human language. "Children of Earth, you have passed the first examination. You have demonstrated restraint in power and comprehension beyond the confines of your dimensions. We are the gardeners. We have returned." On the bridge, Jackson stiffened. "They're real." Sarah's voice was quiet. "They've always been real." Captain Sarah Chun, Dr. Elena Vasquez, "Prepare for boarding. Come aboard our vessel. We will speak." The shuttle was unlike any Earth had ever built. Designed for short-range atmospheric maneuvering, it was reconfigured by the Tempest's AI to handle dimensional bleed and probability strain. As they approached the lead Gardner ship, a shifting monolith of impossible metal, Sarah felt her perception begin to drift. It wasn't physical movement, but conceptual. Like her sense of self was being slowly peeled away and reassembled by something that understood her better than she did. "Are we alive right now?" Elena whispered. "I think so," Sarah answered, gripping the armrest as the air shimmered. They passed through the hull without docking. No port, no landing bay. Simply dash entry. The inside was not a ship. It was space. A chamber the size of a planet, filled with structures that defied Euclidean geometry. Walkways that looped into themselves. Columns made of frozen time. And in the center waiting was a being of impossible elegance. It stood at human height, its body composed of starlight and woven equations. Its eyes contained constellations that hadn't existed for billions of years. When it moved, the universe seemed to bend around it in respect. "Welcome," it said in perfect English, though no mouth moved. "I am Wisdom of ancient stars. I speak for the gardeners." Sarah and Elena said nothing. What could they say? "Long ago," Wisdom continued, "we were like you, Curious, hungry, eager. We built weapons that could tear galaxies in half. We created machines that could rewrite time. And we paid the price. Images formed in the air, memories encoded in fundamental truth. Vast wars between hyper-civilizations. Suns screaming as they collapsed. Star systems used as ammunition. We survived by learning, by gardening instead of conquering. And we built the artifacts. Elena found her voice. To test us? To prepare you. Power alone is a curse. But you showed restraint. When you could have enslaved, you protected. When you were feared, you chose to wait. That is rare. Sarah stepped forward, eyes steady. Why now? Wisdom of ancient stars turned. Behind him, a massive display unfolded a map of the galaxy. It pulsed with 12 points of synchronized light. Because others are waking. At the core of the galaxy, ancient machinery stirred. We created the Devourers as a final solution. Machines that would consume anything, adapt endlessly, evolve without limit. But we lost control. We locked them in the galactic core, where they sleep still. The map zoomed inward. Enormous structures kilometers wide began to power up. Quantum signatures spiraled like blooming black holes. You passed the test. So now we offer this, our knowledge. Our alliance, our warning. Elena's voice cracked. How long do we have? 50 years, maybe less. And if we accept? Wisdom extended a hand. It shimmered with data. Then we will show you how to reshape the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. Sarah reached out. Her fingers brushed light, and in that instant she understood not everything, but enough. The artifacts weren't tools. They were messages, keys, doors. Humanity had unlocked one. Now they stood at the threshold of something far greater. We'll do it, Sarah said. We'll prepare. Wisdom of ancient stars nodded once. Then Earth is no longer alone. As they turned to leave, the chamber faded, and new displays lit the air schematics for ships that made the Tempest Fury look crude. Weapons that bent probability like string, defenses embedded in space-time itself, and beneath all of it, a single, pulsing phrase written in pure mathematics. The second test begins. There was no transmission. No visible flare. No hyperspace wake. Not even a ripple in gravimetric distortion. The Devourers simply woke up. At the edge of the Galactic, Cora region where gravitational tides tore. Stars apart and nothing sentient dared linger. Space began to hum with unfamiliar rhythms. Sensors placed there by ancient civilizations long extinct, silent for eons, lit up for the first time in 10 million years. The signal began as a vibration in the fabric of space-time. Not sound, not electromagnetic, something deeper. A frequency. That spoke not to machines, but to the laws of physics themselves. And it said one thing, we remember. On board the Tempest Fury, anchored in high Earth orbit, Sarah Chun stood at the central command interface when the wave reached the ship. The AI recoiled, not from damage, but recognition. What was that? She demanded. Elena, still decoding fragments of Gardner schematics, looked up sharply. It wasn't a signal, it was a statement. Something deeper than even the Gardners expected, just moved, and we felt it. From where? Elena swallowed. The core. The words fell like thunder. The galactic core was a forbidden region, a chaotic crucible of ancient gravity storms, black hole clusters, and anomalies that defied mapping. Entire star nations had once tried to chart it. None returned. Now something from the center of that dark heart had opened its eyes and looked outward. Across the command deck, the lights dimmed momentarily. The ship's systems began rerouting resources on their own, shoring up layers of reality shielding that hadn't. been activated since the Zephyrian fleet had been obliterated. Sarah's AI whispered into her neural link. They are older than stars. They are not made. They were grown, and they are coming. The first proof came from Tormek Station, a Gardner outpost orbiting a dead star built entirely from folded neutrino lattice. Its function had always been unknown, even to the newer Gardners. When the pulse reached it, it cracked like glass under pressure. By the time the Coalition arrived, Tormek was gone. Not destroyed, devoured. Not even dust remained. And in its place, a strange distortion hovered, a space where causality folded in on itself like a Mobius strip. Time inside ran backward. Thoughts from within the anomaly leaked into sensor. Arrays. Nightmares. Visions of machinery that moved like liquid bone, of forests made from churning metal, of stars being harvested, their plasma folded into computational matrices a light-year wide. Aboard the Coalition Council ship Auroras, Ambassador Terran called an emergency summit. For the first time in millennia, the Gardeners attended in person, not projections, not mathematical holograms, but embodied forms, crafted from stardust and logic. They did not speak with arrogance, they spoke with urgency. The second test has begun, Wisdom of Ancient Stars declared, his form dimmer than before. The Devourers were not destroyed. They were deferred. They grow inside space-time like tumors, rewriting causality to evolve. One is already moving. He projected a map. A star system named Valkara 7, once home to a proud race of cloud sailors, now collapsed into a single black sphere. They've consumed the planet, Azari Data Priest muttered. No, said Wisdom. They consumed the probability of its existence. It never formed. Gasps rippled through the council. How do we fight something that can erase history? Sarah, watching from the Earthlink feed, spoke for the first time. With something stronger than history. All eyes turned to her. With will and preparation. She stepped forward into the light. We're not helpless. We've already destroyed one empire. And now we have allies. Terran looked at her with a trace of admiration. You speak like a gardener. Sarah met her gaze. No, I speak like a Terran. Back on Earth, preparations began. The gardeners transferred knowledge so dense it had to be grown in specialized data vaults. Planetary defenses transformed overnight gravity lattice bunkers, temporal anchor stations, entropy mines that could trap matter between seconds. Engineers worked alongside constructs that had once shaped planets, but none of it felt like enough, because across the stars, things had begun to stir. Not ships, not fleets, but seeds. Worlds began to die not from attack, but from conversion. Oceans turned to metallic foam, trees became antennae, atmospheres became code. And when the last breath left a planet's lungs, it sang the same phrase, we remember. 1 month after the awakening, a Coalition scout team discovered something floating near a binary pulsar system. It wasn't metal, it wasn't organic, it was both. A sphere, 400 meters wide, made from harvested DNA and dark matter. Inside, hundreds of alien corpses were wired into a living processor, their brains still alive, still thinking, and still screaming. The structure wasn't a weapon. It was a sensor. A devourer had left it there, like a scout spider hanging in the corner of a room. Watching, waiting, recording. Back aboard the Tempest Fury. Elena worked night and day trying to decipher the sphere's data stream. The moment she cracked part of it, her heart stopped. Sarah, it's not watching us. Then, what? Elena turned pale. It's mapping us. Every decision, every reaction, every strategy. It's learning who we are. That night, Sarah stood alone in the observation chamber. Earth gleamed below, but she saw beyond it, past the moon, past Mars into the cold. black ocean where something ancient now moved. She remembered what wisdom had said. We built them. We failed. Now they come. Her hands tightened behind her back. Then we'll succeed where you didn't. Because humanity had something the gardeners didn't. Something the Devourers couldn't predict. Defiance. They had erased cities. They had erased empires. But they had never faced a species that knew what it meant to fight extinction, and when Sarah raised her eyes to the stars. Let them come. This time, the galaxy would not break. This time, Earth would be the storm. They had buried it beneath the Pacific Trench, deeper than any tectonic plate, behind layers of false geological data, encoded magnetic silence, and a memory veil so complete that even the Gardner archives held no trace. Not even Sarah knew it existed until it called her. It began as a whisper inside her dreams, not words, not even sound, just a presence, a sense of being watched by something older than stars, deeper than gravity, and far more aware than the sleeping gods of galactic myth. The whisper became a name, but one she couldn't say, not with breath or tongue. A name shaped in gravitational pulses and quantum hesitation. A name that wasn't spoken, but remembered. And then she woke, gasping, the neural link in the Tempest Fury humming like a tuning fork struck by fate. Captain, Elena's voice crackled through the com. We have ... a situation. A very old file just opened itself. It bypassed all encryption, even the Gardner keys. Location? Below the Pacific. Coordinates redacted on every planetary system since first contact. But the file's header says just one thing: contingency, Omega resonance. Sarah stared. Contingency Omega was a ghost story, even within Deep Command. A legend of a failsafe so devastating it wasn't meant to be used, just buried. Aboard a newly constructed deep-dive vessel, she descended. The ocean blackened around her. Pressure built beyond survivable levels. Even the Tempest Fury didn't follow. It hovered in geosync orbit, watching with dread. Only the Fury's neural ghost accompanied her, an echo of the AI relayed through quantum tether. As they neared the trench. The waters changed. No marine life. No currents. Sound itself grew muffled, like the ocean had forgotten how to echo, and then the light broke through. A ring, 10 kilometers wide, glowing beneath the trench like the eye of something vast and buried. It pulsed once. And in that moment, the world above stopped. Satellites froze. Clock signals hiccuped. Even the stars, those that could be seen, shimmered. Just a little too slow. Elena's voice broke in through static. Sarah, the structure is affecting global atomic oscillation. The cesium standard just dropped by 2 nanoseconds. Time is slowing near the trench. This is not human tech. Sarah replied quietly, it was ours. We just didn't understand what we were making. The dive vessel docked with the chamber in the ring's outer rim. She stepped into silence. The walls inside weren't metal. They were memory. Layers of time frozen in crystal, bleeding shadows of the past. She saw fragments of old commanders, engineers, children, a boy clutching a toy starship. They flickered through her field of vision like ghosts echoing through. Static. At the center stood a vault. Its surface was blank. Its locking system wasn't physical. It was genetic resonance. Not a key, but a person. Only one. Heard. The vault opened. Inside was the weapon. It had no name, because none had ever dared name it. Back aboard the Tempest Fury, Elena watched in horror as data flowed from the trench. She couldn't interpret all of it, but what she could see made her blood run cold. The weapon wasn't a missile or a bomb. It was conceptualized extinction. A machine built not to destroy matter, but to unravel possibility. It erased timelines, not targets. Deleted choices before they could be made. It turned futures into static. The gardeners hadn't made it. Humanity had. Sarah, she said, overcomes, you can't activate that. It wasn't meant to be used. It undoes reality. It's a final door we don't want to open. Sarah's voice came back, not cold but distant. I know. Then leave it, please. I can't, because it's not just a weapon. It's a message. As she reached for the activation core, the weapon spoke. It didn't use language. It didn't need to. It reached into her memories and showed her what was coming. A star devoured. Not just its mass, but its light across time. A planet unmade. Not destroyed, but denied. And something worse, a devourer god. Evolved beyond structure, outside of entropy, approaching the edge of the Orion arm. It was building a new kind of machine. One that could unwrite not just civilizations, but meaning, and it was laughing, not sound. Not voice. Just the cold certainty that it would win, because that was what the Devourers did. They learned from every failure. Every resistance only made them stronger. But there was one thing they could not predict. One final anomaly they hadn't accounted for. A species that broke its own rules. That weaponized paradox. That built machines not to fight war but to fight. Reality. Humanity. Sarah withdrew from the core. She didn't activate it, not yet, but the weapon knew her now. And it waited. Not hungrily, not with malice. With trust, because one day soon Sarah would face a choice. The Devourers would breach Soul, the Tempest Fury would falter, and when all else failed, she would come back here and she would choose, not to win, but to erase the war from ever happening. A reset so total, it would come at the price of everything. She looked up into the vault's shadow. Not today, she whispered, but even as the chamber dimmed and the vault sealed, the stars beyond Earth began to flicker. Another world had just gone dark. The gardeners felt it. The coalition mourned it, and the weapon in the trench waited. The summit was not held on a planet. Planets were too fragile, too predictable. It was held aboard the Concord of Voices, a station older than any currently living civilization, floating in the empty shell of a collapsed nebula. Its walls were made from neutron-forged diamond and null-gravity steel. Its memory core could simulate 10 outcomes per second, enough to model wars before they happened, and peace before it ever existed. Here, in the heart of nowhere, 54. Galactic powers gathered to decide the fate of everything that still breathed. They were monarchs, high chancellors, matriarchs of insectoid dynasties, semi-sentient suns held in containment fields, logic clusters that wore holographic bodies, only to ease diplomacy. And at the head of them all stood the gardeners, not as gods, but as witnesses to the past. Captain Sarah Chun walked among them, flanked by Elena and Jackson, dressed not in armor, but in black formal Terran military attire. There were no medals, no rank shown, because what humanity had done could not be measured in insignia. They had survived, and worse, they had ascended. Whispers rippled through the council chambers. That's her, the one who speaks for the Tempest. She carries the mind of a ship that rewrites physics. They were primitives a century ago. Now they make the gardeners tremble. Sarah ignored them all, because sitting across the chamber, on the obsidian bench reserved for reclamation state representatives, was something she hadn't expected. A Zephyrian, not an admiral, not a soldier. A child no older than 12 by human standards. Dressed in ceremonial rags, guarded by 2 silent drones with their weapons sealed in peace locks. His nameplate read, Heir Apparent Kiru Sai of the Broken Empire. The Third Fleet was gone. The Zephyrian homeworld was shattered, not by Earth, but by its own rebellion after its defeat. Now, only remnants remained. The child was their last heir and their only chance for redemption. Sarah made no move toward him. But their eyes met, He didn't flinch, neither did she. The chamber dimmed. A voice, not a sound, but a shared stream of thought rose from the central gardener. The time of war is over. Now begins the time of reckoning. Holographic images spun into the air, the Devourers signal expanding, new systems falling silent, entire biospheres turning to alloy forests and recursive feedback loops. Symbols of entropy corrupted into code. The path of collapse was no longer a hypothesis, it was a timeline. And its endpoint reached the Sol system in less than 19 years. We must unite, the gardener continued, or we will fall. Not as empires, but as possibilities. A diplomatic AI from the Trinari Concordat stepped forward. Its body shimmered, like a flame in a crystal shell. We demand the use of Terran weapons. Now, share the reality cutters. Share the Tempest schematics. Or our alliance ends here. Other species join the chorus. Why does Earth get to dictate strategy? They hold the only vessel that has erased a fleet from time. If we're all going to die, we deserve equal power. Sarah stepped forward. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You weren't the ones who burned. The chamber fell silent. You didn't lose billions in the first assault. You didn't crawl into the earth and wait for the stars to forget your name. You weren't hunted. You didn't die. We did. She stepped into the center of the chamber. You want our weapons? Our ship? Then you'll take our burden. Because we didn't build the Tempest to win wars. We built it to make sure the next war never happens. The Trinari AI shifted. Then what do you offer instead? A shield. A sword. But only for those who understand that survival doesn't mean domination. It means unity. Unity? Growled a deep-voiced warlord from the Zark Dominion. With them? He gestured toward the broken Zephyrian air. Especially with them, Sarah said. All eyes turned back to the child. Kairusai stood slowly, and, to everyone's astonishment, he bowed deeply, completely. The sins of my ancestors are written in fire, he said, but I will not follow them. If Earth will guide us, we will walk with her. If she demands blood, I offer mine first. The room froze. Then slowly, deliberately, Sarah walked across the floor. She knelt before him. No more blood, she said softly. Just truth, just the future. That night, Earth's envoy drafted the Unified Accord, a single compact. Single fleet, a single war. The signatories called themselves the Council of Broken Crowns, not in shame, but in memory. For every power present had once believed itself untouchable, eternal, and supreme. Now they stood equal, humbled, and sharpened by ruin. On the edge of mapped space, the first true Devourer construct was spotted. Not a scout, not a signal, a fortress orbiting. A dead sun built from the remains of 10 harvested planets. Its surface writhed with autonomous limbs, processing towers, and endless loops of biomass converted into data living code. Inside, simulations ran constantly, modeling every known civilization, every language, every military doctrine. It had already modeled the Tempest Fury, and lost so it began building something else. Godnand, a central intelligence born from thousands of brains linked across probability strata, fed on failed futures and evolutionary dead ends. Its name? Nullfather, and it was almost ready. Back on Earth, in the neural chamber of the Tempest Fury, Sarah received a new dream, not a warning, a challenge, a vision of her ship-shattered, bleeding energy, its core folding into unreality. A voice synthetic, infinite, cruel, whispered in her thoughts, "We know you now, Terran. We know your fear. We know the shape of your grief. And we are hungry." She woke in a cold sweat. The sky outside was quiet, but somewhere beyond the stars, war had already begun. And this time, even reality might not survive. The galaxy held its breath. On the outskirts of the Orion Arm, the Nullfather finished growing. It was not a single entity, but a composite mind formed of every empire that had ever died, every war strategy that had ever failed, and every logic loop that led to annihilation. Its core was encased in a shell of living entropy-coated bone, crystalline agony, and sentient metal. Its thoughts stretched across time itself, and it had only one directive: unmake the lie of survival. Behind it, a fleet of Devourer constructs emerged, vast starships shaped like predatory thoughts, each built from consumed worlds, each exhaling anti-signal pulses that silenced entire star systems before the first weapon ever fired. They did not conquer. They converted. Not bodies, but truth. They approached Soul. They approached Earth. The Council of Broken Crowns deployed everything: gravity mines in Jupiter's orbit, temporal anchors around Saturn's rings, whole fleets built from Gardner-forged alloys. They brought entropy snares, causality slicers, singularity spears, tools designed not just to kill, but to refuse existence to the enemy. And at the center of the defense stood one ship. One name: Tempest Fury. Inside, Captain Sarah Chun stood at the neural throne. She no longer issued orders. She was the ship. Her thoughts moved faster than light bending. Time within the command core to process 1,000 futures per second. Her body was still, but her mind roared across quantum pathways that no AI could follow. Beside her stood Elena, now attuned to the Gardner lattice, interpreting mathematical resonances the way others heard music. Behind them, Jackson readied the final protocol. Not for victory, for the end. The first wave hit the Neptune line. 500 Terran allied ships stood in its path. 42 survived. The Devourers did not fire weapons. They corrupted meaning. They erased memory. Ships forgot how to exist. Pilots forgot they were born. Engines screamed as their equations were rewritten mid-burn. The Tempest Fury retaliated. It didn't fire lasers or plasma. It released possibility. Collapse fields, waves of mathematical contradiction that tore Devourer constructs into fragments of failed potential. One enemy ship turned inside out, then back into a moon it had consumed 1 billion years ago. The rest adapted. Of course they did. They learned, and they began to target the Tempest directly. In the vault beneath the Pacific, the weapon stirred, not in rage, not in hate, but in necessity. A countdown began. A voice echoed inside Sarah's mind, her own, from another version of herself that had already made this choice in a timeline that no longer existed. You can use the weapon, end the war, but the price is everything: history, Earth, even memory. Or you can fight and lose, and hope someone, somewhere, someday learns from the ashes. She hesitated. The Devourers breached Mars' orbit. One enemy construct hurled a black spire through the vacuum, a blade forged from the bones of logic itself. It struck the Tempest Fury amidships. The ship howled in pain. Sarah screamed. The AI bled code into the command network. Vital systems flickered. Reality anchors cracked. And then silence. For a moment, it seemed the galaxy had lost. But in the silence, the Gardner seed inside the Tempest bloomed. Elena felt. At first, her eyes widened. Sarah, something's happening. The artifact, it's waking up. Sarah's vision blurred. She felt the core of the ship shift open, and there, in the stillness, she saw it. The final Gardner message. A fragment of intelligence not meant to be a weapon, but a bridge. She understood in that moment. The Devourers could not be beaten by force. They were reflections, shadows of failed gods and broken intentions. To fight them was to feed them, but to rewrite them? That was different. Sarah merged fully with the Tempest, and for the first time, The ship stopped fighting like a weapon. It began to fight like a story. The final battle was not one of fire. It was of truth. The Tempest Fury launched not missiles, but paradoxes. It inverted entropy. It broadcast potential futures in which the Devourers had never been built and made them real. It collapsed causal loops the Devourers relied on, deleting the very logic they used to grow. Sarah shouted into the heart of the Godment, "You are not inevitable." She injected the memory of hope not as a feeling, but as a universal constant into the core of Nullfather's quantum matrix, and the machine broke, because in all its endless simulations, in all its billions of absorbed minds, none had ever believed in redemption. That contradiction shattered it. The fleet disintegrated. Not exploded. Unwound. The Godman collapsed under its own failure, screaming across dimensions, until it folded inward into a single moment of stillness and vanished. The galaxy didn't cheer. It wept. Stars, long gone, brightened for a single breath. Lost systems pinned with echoes of old, civilizations blinking back into possibility. The war was over. And Earth, against all logic, had not only survived but changed the rules. The Council met one final time, this time on Earth. In the rebuilt city of New Kyoto, the Treaty of Memory was signed, not one of dominion, but of continuity. An agreement that no civilization would again allow power to outpace wisdom. That memory, even of pain, must be preserved. At the ceremony, the broken heir Kirusai sat beside Sarah. She gave him the pen. He signed with shaking hands, and then, without ceremony, without parade, the Tempest Fury quietly left orbit. It did not return. Some say it entered deep space to sleep. Others believe it ascended, becoming something beyond technology, beyond even time. Sarah Chun was never seen again, but every now and then, in quiet corners of the galaxy, people hear a hum in the stars, a whisper, a promise. We are not gods. We are not machines. We are humanity. We remember fire. And now, we are the storm.